Finance Committee meeting of the Concord School Board. In attendance from the committee is Mr. Cotton, Ms. Campbell, and myself. Ms. Meeker is unable to join us this evening, so I will be appointing Ms. Walsh as a committee member for this evening if she agrees to do that.
I agree.
Thank you very much for that. We'll be covering a couple topics tonight. First will be the FY25 budget, the FY26 budget, a bond for HVAC and buses that has already been budgeted, and covering the middle school project. With that, let's start with the FY25 budget. Superintendent or Mr. Dunn?
Jack is ready to go.
Okay.
All right.
And he brought that. A little trivia first. Jim, I don't think you can answer.
Runlet?
Any other guests?
This is what you dream of.
Well, it does look like broken ground.
Something to do with the eclipse. Oh, no, it was school district again.
The first school superintendent. I don't know.
There you go. Louis Runland.
I was right. Okay.
Superintendent for almost 50 years.
Yes.
Lived right down here on Summit. Had a little house, yeah.
50 years. Superintendent, you got a little bit of a run to go before you can break the record.
She's got it.
Yes.
So there you
Civil
go.
War, World One. Great
He
Depression.
graduated from Concord High, too. Yeah,
That's
long time.
cool.
So,
Okay.
buried over in Bloom something. What's the cemetery off North State?
Blossom.
Blossom.
Blossom. Buried
Blossom
next
Hill.
to Conant.
Good that you know this.
That's a big thing. Yeah.
So, all right, well, there you go. There's the tip of the day.
Thanks.
All right. So, all I'm doing is reiterating the budget where you stand, as you've seen a lot of newspaper articles about various budgets around the state. You come in at 1.58% increase in expenditures. Again, I put in these trust fund balances because they're important. It's going to help you, I think, tremendously as you go out to bond. And as the middle school project moves down the line, you having some cash reserves to help pay for that. We will talk about reimbursement in this motion that I had handed out. And then, as we talked about too, overall, the revenues that are coming in to the budget for next year with a 2.9% increase, 3.09 on the local level and 1.27 at the state, and then combined for 2.9. So we will revisit this again in October, or if you decide to do that beforehand. But just wanted to reiterate it in case anybody had questions or wanted to do anything, okay? Propose anything.
Jack, one
Yep.
of the things that's still up for debate is the adequacy of the money.
You don't have a mic.
You need a microphone? Jack has two.
Yeah, Jack, one of the issues that I don't see reflected, have we looked at any of the adequacy increases that are being proposed?
Well, I mean, if you talk right now, we get base adequacy of $4,100 per kid. So if they jump it to, I think, what are they proposing, like 72.39
Well,
or
that's
some-
one, but
that's
the one, they also had on the table 4,400, which was a small increase, but it's still $300 per kid.
Yeah, I mean, you would have take, say your ADM is what, 3,900
Yeah.
times, $3,000 per kid?
Yeah.
If it went from there, it's $11.7 million.
300.
300,
Oh, 300.
41 to
hours?
4, yeah, $300, yeah.
Oh,
Per
so
kid.
the court ruling, well, the court says it should be 7,200.
Right,
That's
but,
what-
uh,
but if they say 300 times, what is it, 3,900?
1.1 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I
It's
mean,
another
something-
$1 million,
Yeah.
okay.
So again, if they do that in October like they did last year,
Right. Then
you
the-
guys are nimble enough to make decisions.
Well, I think that's the point, that in October, if we do, and it looks like something's going to pass. I keep watching it. I mean, I'm not sure the 7,000 will make it, but it clearly they know they have to do something. So I'm guessing that the 4,400 will stick. And so that means the committee has to decide on another $1 million. So that's in October when you do that.
Yeah.
It's not,
I think the key question will be to make sure that they don't give with
From the
one
trust
hand
fund.
and
Take
take
from
with the
another.
other, which is what they
Yeah, the
did
little
to
real
us
estate
this-
game they played.
They did to us this year, not just on the statewide property tax, but, you know, they increased this grant amount, and then decreased another, so.
Hence the $1.8 million
Yeah.
reduction. Yes. Yep. So I just again, the budget, the FY '25 budget covers July 1 to June 30th, and the tax assessment year that will affect the October is going to be April 1 through March 31st. So that city is probably doing their calculations now, because that assessment ended March 31st, so they're on to the new assessment year. So, I know you love the 13 budget sessions, so I figured I'd just go right into budget 26.
Looking ahead to February, January, February next year?
I am. I'm going to close my eyes and click my heels. So some things that we're thinking about already. Facilities and the maintenance budget. We're going to start looking at that as it relates to specifically also Runlet fading out, and start looking at operational costs that we might start seeing in the future. Some of the aging facilities of, as we know, we built the elementary schools all at the same time, so they age at the same time. And just some of the other needs that will happen. We also do have on the facilities in 26, the summer of 25, which would affect the 26 budget, we would be adding the HVAC into Concord High School. That's the plan.
Can I stop you just?
Yeah.
Because we're getting, we're getting closer to, starting those HVAC projects, and they should be in play at this point. Any surprises financially on those, or are they still on the same schedule? as we are?
Still status quo, steady
Thank
path. On the budget
Thank you.
passed, so hopefully all stays well.
Bye, Sarah.
Goodbye, friends.
Take care.
Thank you. Happy Eclipse Day.
Mhm, you too.
So during this upcoming budget, you have 5 bargaining units that will be, that will impact the 26 budget. So just so you're aware, you have your principals, your ed assistants, your tutors, custodians, and transportation. And then in the FY '26 budget, you'll be negotiating with the teachers. Some other things are Memorial Field. We don't know where that stands as we work with the city, but that could be potentially in that fiscal year, potentially. I was aware by the prior tech director, and I happened to see the meeting with the city as they were doing their priority setting session. They brought up the fiber network. So in the mid-90s, the city and the school put in fiber to connect all its locations. Well, that fiber is going to be 30 years old and due for an upgrade. So I anticipate, especially from the comments from that meeting, that we will be picking up our portion of that upgrade. So we'll have to wait to see what that looks like. And then obviously the middle school project, will there be any impact financially on that, or with the use of the financial tools that you have at your disposal, will we be able to push that off? All depends on how we fund it, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. On the state side, you have the biannual budget coming up next year, so state adequacy, I'm sure, will be front and center versus when in this mid-year budget. What overall in education funding, state building aid, did they do anything with that? And then New Hampshire retirement will also be up for setting of the rates. So we will see. And then the federal, it's their grants. We're seeing, as Ellen starts to keep an eye on things, the money that was not spent during ESSER now getting rebundled and coming out in various things. I know she has started applying or making people aware that they're interested in, we are interested in various topics. So we'll see what comes out of that. But Medicaid and also any federal legislation that might help.
Released the Title I numbers today.
Okay. So just also a discussion as you come off those 13 meetings and it's fresher in your head, we just wanted to talk about presentation, and it's what we've done since I've been here, somewhat what we did on the school board when I was there. We used to get a binder and then they would say, okay, stick it in K, stick it in N, and it was just a lot. And I tried to make it a little bit more streamlined with the searchable document. But 13 work sessions. Do we continue going that way? I wanted to highlight that does include 2 public hearings, but under your charter, you're only required to have 1. You do have a meeting to post a budget, which you have to have, but it's really an open session and posting a budget. We usually don't schedule a topic unless there's something you want. And then the approval of the budget is also pretty much an open session. You don't come in here at 5:30 or 6 o'clock and then, say all in favor and do it. You usually deliberate and have it. But, if you consolidated, there's 3. So just wanted to talk about, I didn't propose anything. I just wanted to get your feedback because, believe it or not, 10 months from now, we'll be doing a budget presentation again. So I'm just trying to get you a little ahead of it.
Yeah.
My feeling on it is that public hearings are important. I think it's good to do them at different locations than here. If I were gonna eliminate something, which we really can't, but I'd be in favor of more public hearing than less, frankly.
Okay.
Anybody else? I agree with, I personally agree with Mr. Cotton, and, I always have a feeling, and I did it, not so much as this one, because I think we covered everything adequately, but I always have a feeling as we come into the end of March that, we need more time to get information. I don't necessarily propose more time, but I don't know if I'd be cutting it either.
Yeah.
And I think the 2 public hearings, in different parts of the city, I think is a good thing.
So so the 2 different buildings next year?
Well, I don't know, we'll let the board,
Yeah.
next year's board decide that, whether it's.
I
in
mean, I
2
like
different
the one
locations.
here, because you
Yep.
can televise it, and then
One on the
somewhere
other side. Yeah.
else.
We usually do that. I mean, usually it's been Millbrook. This year we changed to Beaver Meadow, but we've never used broken ground that I've been here, like their gymnasium or anything. But, okay, we just tried to get that feedback while it's fresh in your head and you're exhausted from it. Figured you might want to talk about it.
So just something to think about. When we first started this year, I think it was Sarah brought up a point about setting some kind of a guideline for us as we began to develop the budget. And I think we kind of got away from that a little bit, but I think that's really helpful for us because ultimately, at the end of the day, on the 26th of March, we were pretty close to what Sarah had said to us at the beginning in terms of what we wanted to do. I think it's important that the board, the finance committee, or in collaboration with the full board, kind of set the stage based on all the data, And it could happen after opening, we do an opening presentation, right? We do everything, we kind of give you a scan of the entire budget. But I think it would be really helpful because it will help us to be more specific in our presentations to you.
Yeah, well, and maybe that should be a goal for the retreat in January, to have a discussion on what.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
That can be an outcome of the meeting.
Because then we can stay in that, and we know how far we can go and where we can't go. Because ultimately, you ended up with that at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think if you set that for us, then we know that when we're proposing new curriculum material or we're proposing a new program, that we will fall within your guidelines. And I think it's helpful for us as we develop it, and we spend a lot of time on the budget in preparation of our meetings with you.
Okay. But I figure we can bring this topic up. I figure we'd start at finance.
Yeah.
Can work and see if you have any proposals for the full board to consider, but we're thinking it might be time to just change it up a little bit. And I agree with what you say, Bob, as far as, even though your charter says 1, I testified in front of the Charter Commission. Also, the law is 7 days to post a budget. Yours says 10, and I felt strongly that you need to have a little bit higher threshold because of what responsibilities you have.
We're also going to try to bring you all of the pieces. So right now, what we do is we come in, one time we do special ed, then we do curriculum, then we do what. We're going to try to present it all so that you have all of it in front of you to start the process so that you know the breadth of what we've proposed.
helpful.
I think it will be helpful, and I think it will actually,
A little overwhelming, but helpful.
Yes.
it will be overwhelming at first, but once you go through it a couple of times, it does become easier. But I do think that it will expedite some of the discussion because you'll have a picture of what's coming, what's proposed down the road, and how will that balance with something that is right in front of you that night. So we want to change it up a little bit, not without losing all the information you get. We don't want to do that, but it was probably one of Jack and I's goal to try to do.
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Okay. So for this is, again, what you've already have in your budget for these amounts. These are tentative amounts produced by our financial advisors, the same financial advisors the city uses, which is Hilltop Securities. And we've used them for years. They used to be called First Southwest, and then they changed names. But I just wanted to explain, too, from a bonding standpoint, we're beginning that process, but it isn't just when you approved your budget, oh, yeah, it's all done. There's a whole step of things that have to happen. Some of these things have started to be done already. Like number 2, update your disclosure. We've done all that. All our audits came back fine. So we're in the process of doing this. We'll be coming to you with the vote, the public hearings, and all the various components that have to happen with this. So it's not a simple process. It is a little bit long. Usually takes about 60 days. But I just wanted you to be aware of that process. Okay? And I know I've mentioned this before, but it doesn't hurt to reiterate it, because when you see the stuff sometimes you're like, didn't we approve that? Because there's a lot that gets thrown at you. But this is definitely a laborious process and a lot of paperwork, but well worth it.
This was really helpful for me. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Middle school project. So I wanted to give a little history from someone that's lived through one project and now may live through another one. So
Optimistic, aren't you?
optimistic. In July, I wasn't. So buildings built and planned. So in the elementary project was building 3 schools at one time. And that started February 10th, 2011, and ended in June of 12. The middle school, what's planned is 1 middle school. And that has been going on since 2017. I think sometimes I could argue it was going on before that, because being part of the elementary, it was always, that's great you're doing the elementary schools, but when you're doing the middle school, every time it was a riot. So here we are. The state building aid process was an application. But you filled out that application, you got on the list. That's what made it not sustainable. So now they've moved to, yeah, it's an application, but it's a ranking system. So that is different than what it was before. The budget that the board passed for that was $62.5 million. All right, and that was after the schematic design was done. You have not even done that part yet. You did all pre-schematic, all estimates on a location that you didn't know where you were going, on the highest inflation in the country in mid of 2022 to get the number that is out there. All right. The budget you have not approved, so that's to be determined. The actual cost of those 3 elementary schools came in at $55 million, so $7.5 million under budget. What your actual cost will be on the middle school, to be determined. The economics at the time, if you all remember, was the significant downturn in September of 2008. And there was a labor market that had, maybe you could argue, a little friendlier to those that needed to hire. Okay? And you had government spending, but nothing like the government spending that's happening now. So at the time, in 2009, there was what's called Build America bonds. And there was also the ARA, the American Recovery Act, that happened that helped stimulate, keep things going. Now, the middle school project, you have high inflation. You have a labor market that's completely, I think, opposite of the labor market from 12, 15 years ago. And you have government spending that's significantly higher than what it was back then. The building process that was followed for the elementary project was a design bid build. So we paid to go through schematic design development, create construction documents, and then created bid documents and put it out and got hard bids. and there were two that became the finalists, and the board chose one of those. Now, you have not determined what that process is going to be. Right now, we're going through a process where we may do a hybrid of what's called CM, Construction Manager, but you still could potentially do design, bid, build. I think we're going to weigh that out. Considering the market, the supply chain, we're trying to figure out what exactly that should be, but right now, that CM piece will be critical to determining what's really the market looks like, specifically in New Hampshire. That's what we need to see. Now, the elementary, how was that financed? That was financed with bonds, bands, state building aid that also had an additional 3% green incentive. So we're entitled to 40%. There was an additional 3% that you got for the life of a project if it qualified and was CHIP certified, which those schools were, which was collaborative high-performance schools. So energy. And my first introduction on the board was this project. I came on in January of '09, and then they laid out the schools, and that initial plan, well, the initial discussion was to renovate the schools that were there and build a school. And then it was they were going to do them over 10 years, one at a time. And when we looked at it, we said, you're going to put generations of kids into perpetual construction. And we made the move to try to do all three at one time, which wound up being successful in our minds. And I think I would not have been wanting to come off building the elementary project and then go right into a middle school project. So there's a variety of other tools that you have at your disposal. So as we did, we financed that money. You didn't have the reserves that you have today back then. So there was a bond anticipation note, and then that bond anticipation note was rolled into a larger bond in order to fund that project. Right now, we're using your flows from your reserves. If you remember in the motion, we said it would be made up of general fund, expendable trusts, and bonds. And that was all just to cover everything, because right now we're trying to work the market and work getting a much better price, a more reasonable price for the school project. The number of different finance plans that we reviewed before finalizing that budget and hit and go was 29 different plans that we went through. And that 29 included 29A, 29B, 29C, 29D. So in those various 1, 2, 3, 4, there were different levels because there's so many different ways you can finance it. And no offense, but sometimes you felt like a car salesman because they'd say, what do you want the number to be? But you're trying to balance what the taxpayers want and being fiscally responsible to say, because there is a method you could finance it and the thing looks like a ski slope the other way. Where you could put all the money out into the future and say, not my problem. Federal government's kind of doing that right now. We'll get off my soapbox. But, that's the thing. We were trying not to find that balance. And then you had the opportunity, because of your autonomy, to save $440,000 a year 3 years ago because the call date came up and you were able to take advantage of the market and refinance and save money. So we've only done, I would say, one plan, 1A, 1B, which was at the number that you quoted, less building aid. Okay? Long way to go.
Yeah, we will have many more than just one.
Oh, you will. You'll love numbers. If you think the budget's fun, you wait till we get through
I
these
know.
financing plans.
I know from STEAM projects.
Yes.
That we had many more, several more, but not anything like this because it was a much more limited project.
Well, if you remember, we saved a good bit of money there because we reprioritized it and paid for a roof
Right.
over a broken ground, third grade wing.
Yeah, we manage our money, and that's one of the advantages that this board has.
Absolutely.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
And, it's just one that comes up, and you just did a great job, outlining, how we addressed things, how we went through the elementary schools. Do you remember at any point where the board took a vote and said that we would not build a middle school until the elementary schools were completely paid off?
No.
I've looked and never seen anything close to that.
No.
That's just a
No. But
urban myth.
I will tell you this, the comment was always made about when, it's great you're doing the elementary, but when you're doing the middle school.
Yeah,
That
a lot of
was,
people
I
ask me.
remember that specifically. There was a lot of that, but no, there was just no way. No, was the comment made, listen, we want to get this out of the way because the middle school was coming. We knew it had been 20 years since the
Yeah.
high school was done. If that went on for 10 years, you'd be butting right up against it. And now you got a school that's going to be 30 years old. So our goal was to try to leave some breathing room for taxpayers and for the board. You build a new school, you have a little bit gap, you got some savings, you're talking almost 16 million in savings in order for this to happen. COVID also, I think, interrupted that. That was the conversation, not about, well, let's wait till 2041 before we touch a middle school. It's not
Thank you.
possible. Yeah.
Thank you. I knew you had been here. I just was asking for that input. I appreciate it.
No problem, no problem. So I think there was some discussion about what we've actually paid out so far. So this is a list of what's actually paid out. We're in the process of developing all the accounts that we will ultimately use when the bond comes in and move this stuff, and also generating what we did when I did this. I was chair of finance, capital facilities, and the building committee at the time. And we would report out every month to the board. It was in the board packet, the report of what the status of everything was, where the expenses were, how we were running, benchmarking against the budget, our contingency, everything was in that. So we're building that now so that we can put that into your monthly report, okay? But that's what you've spent so far. Now, financing this, what are the things we're gonna consider? As I said earlier on with that one report, you get the number, because remember, what you approved was not the budget. You approved the school building aid application. That was the task of the architect, to submit an application, because as we've been saying, be ready. That's all we want to do is get in line to be ready. One of the good things that, because you've done what you've done, you're part of the 17 projects that are grandfathered now. You're on that list. You're locked in, which is perfect. Now it's the funding piece that we have to get figured out. But things that we're going to factor in are interest rates. As I talk with the financial advisors, they're expecting the feds potentially drop the rates 3 times this year. That could potentially impact your thing. We'll see whether that happens. But, again, if we could predict that, we probably all wouldn't be sitting in this room. The timing of the rates, conversations with the city, that is always an important conversation that does happen. Even when we did the elementary project, both public bodies had gotten together and spoke in council chambers about, because all the bonds up to that time were 20-year bonds for big projects. And then we asked them, you want 20-year or 30-year? And they had prepared 30-year because there's other, besides our 7 buildings, there's other roads and bridges and stuff that have to happen. So that coordination does happen. So their project coordination, as we discussed, and we've discussed with the city folks, and it's also been discussed with the architects as it relates to some infrastructure needs up on the broken ground property that have to happen. It's been on their capital projects since 2014, if I remember correctly, for a water booster. We have enough to provide the school. It's when you get into the fire protection where it is, but this would be a benefit to both residents up there as well as the school district. And then, obviously, what is the impact of that coordination? And a lot of that also stemmed from, the existing runlet and being up there. There's taxable and non-taxable bonds. All that'll depend on what kind of financing, what kind of grants do we get, variety of different things that we use the financial advisors to try to determine what's the best path to go. Right now, there's SB 342 that's looking at building aid. So those rules are changing. We are looking to schedule Amy Clark from school building aid to come in after all this rule setting is done. My conversation with her, she had hoped to say, can we put it off till July, because that's when things are firmer. But we'll see where that goes. We might want to go a little later and get past the summer. But we keep in touch with her to see. I know they're in the process of doing the Ed Rule 321, which oversees the building aid as well, so they're making some adjustments to that. Obviously, the school district operating budget, how all that is going to fit into it. The taxpayers, the district's bonding capacity, our ability to bond. Federal rebates in the infrastructure, what is that? The
Infrastructure.
Inflation Reduction Act,
Yes.
right? There's money in there incentives in there. So does that work with our timing? We're researching that. HMFH is also working with Unitil on utility rebates as you get into solar and other things. Because remember, that number and the planning that was done based on all the community feedback was to have a sustainable building. So that is a net plus building that's in those numbers. You have your facilities and renovation trust fund. Again, the bond structure schedule, we typically do what's called equal principal. So we pay more interest up front, but the project is less. You could do level payments, which is what a mortgage is. Your mortgage, you see your mortgage is the same every month. With ours, that goes down. That's why we have that 5% differential. As it goes down, we put money away. That's the advantage. Again, higher interest rate, more up front, but you pay less interest overall. And then there's a structure where you can put that all out further and make it real low now, and those taxpayers in the future, hold on to your whatever. So we try to be responsible, and you'll see those various things. I mentioned donations. I know that's tried, not how successful it is, and anything else that people might bring forward to us, we consider. So that's just a list of a couple of things we'll be thinking about on top of the FY26 budget.
Just one comment on
Yeah.
one thing you said about Amy, what's her name? My only thought is the sooner we get the information, the better. I mean, if it's July, it's July.
She wanted to get past rulemaking, because right now she
I
would be
understand.
telling you hypotheticals.
Yeah, no, I
That was the
understand.
problem.
I'd
Yep.
like firm information, but
Yep.
I don't want to put it off just because
Nope.
it's.
If you want
summer
July,
break.
I'll schedule it for July. I just didn't know because of the summer, but that was my plan, was to try to have her come in if they're all done, okay? Let me see, what else this is my last thing in your 20 after 6. So, in front of you is a declaration of official intent for the school district. Now, my conversation with bond counsel is the expenditures that you have spent would be eligible for reimbursement, okay, because they're part of the overall project. Once you approve it, I can go back and look at it. I had crafted this motion from a prior motion and said, do I need to do this? They said no, but as a practice, it's not bad. I said, my practice is prefer that you guys are aware and the public is aware you're tracking these expenses and that we are gonna get reimbursed. So it's my request that you recommend this to the full board for the May 6th meeting, so that people can have a conversation, that we are tracking the expenses, that we haven't lost the funds, and that it is a long process.
It says 11
Yeah, where's the
11 million come
Where's that
from?
come from?
So I derived that from what I'm expecting. So remember, 10.3 is what you've committed to the architect.
Okay.
And the reason why I did that is because I don't know at what point we're gonna go to that bond market. So I wanted to incorporate that, plus you got the million. But you're really gonna start spending most of that money as we get towards the construction documents. So right now, 1.6 is what you're spending between now and June. 2.4, 2.6 for construction documents. That's gonna get you till January, March of next year. So I'm just trying to put out as far as I can. I don't think it's gonna go that high. I think we'll probably do something before we hit that, but that's how I derive my number.
Jack, that number is to give us flexibility in timing with regards to the bond market.
Correct.
No.
Yep.
Okay.
And your cash flow is good. And that's why I wanted to make sure we protect that cash flow coming back. But if there's any challenges that could delay this, I don't want to go too far and have that cash not potentially come back. So I'm trying to balance all that. And things will get more solidified as we work the numbers. I mean, once you hit June and you get schematic design number, then we all start working on where do we go. Because when we did the elementary, we made the decision to say, listen, we're gonna fund everything but the furniture, all the ancillary stuff, and come down that 7.5 million. And if we need it, we'll go out to it then, because we didn't want to put that into the 30-year bond. The project ran so well, we didn't need it.
You're talking about furniture and all, which would have
Technology,
a
yeah.
shorter lifespan than 30 years.
Correct.
Because we really want to only bond those items that, are going to be around for 30 years, and that's the reason we're doing a
Yep.
30-year bond. Just wanted to clarify that for anybody who was.
A lot of moving parts. And here's
Thank
the other thing too, that, you know what, and I'm gonna go back and add it, so you can see me add it. I also wanna highlight, as I go back to this, and I'll throw it on the screen, and I'm gonna put it after other, it's called, E-rate. So we should hit category 2 renewal around the time the middle school project comes in. So category 1 is where they reimburse us for our internet. Category 2 is where there's infrastructure money. So that helped pay for all our wireless access points. They pay up to, I think it's 60% of it. So we're gonna be looking at all those things as we get ready. And I think our timing, and that's usually 5-year money that you have to spend it, meaning you can break it up over 5 years or you can spend it within less, but you have, it comes up every 5 years.
That being, we potentially,
Might not have to bond it because
we would lower the amount of money that we would have to
Correct.
bond because it would be given to us
Correct.
as a grant type of a.
And so you know, everything we're talking about right here was not considered in your school building aid application. None of this. It was, we need to submit and get as much aid as possible, and as they told us, submit your worst-case scenario, because you can't come back for more,
Right.
okay?
But we're not going to be satisfied with the worst-case scenario. We're going to continue to work.
Well, your worst-case scenario is already going, you know,
I was going to say, we're already
Yeah.
doing something.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to work.
Yeah.
To drive that down. All right. Other questions for Jack?
Broken ground should be capitalized, other than that.
Okay, I will do that. So, and just so you know, I am referring to that broken ground school park complex, because as I've been reading, I always knew, I had been told, but never read or did anything, as it relates to that was planned to be a school, a middle school, elementary school, or high school. That's why all that land was bought. It goes back to 1972 when all that started. And it was called the Broken Ground School Park Complex. And it was supposed to have a combination of recreation and school. So next to the property of 59 acres and the 35 acres you own, next to that is 120 acres that the city owns, as well as the school district is co-owner of. And that was all bought with what's called LWCF money, Land Water Conservation, or they also called it the Bureau of Recreation. So that was all done in the 70s, and then reaffirmed in 1989 in a long-range planning commission that was a joint between the school and the city.
So by park, you're meaning like a complex that includes both multiple schools and,
Recreation.
From what I,
Recreational
yeah,
area.
exactly, which it does, has all the trails, and then there'll be what you have somewhat, if you wind up going with a track and all that, it would have school facilities, but the community can use that as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Good, because it's always been our intention to, you know, maintain those trails, access to those trails, and, you know, to have the community be a part of this as well, so good. All right. You need a motion from us to take this to the full board,
Yeah,
correct?
you don't have to read it if you don't want to. You can just say that you concur and I will. But if you want to.
Is
I'm
that-
trying to have an early night.
That's this
in
right
case-
here, right?
I want to get you a head start on the August 2044 eclipse.
Yeah. Yeah, the next full eclipse that can be seen here in Concord or whatever, and solar eclipse is 2079.
Oh, that's why my
So,
wife texted me that tonight. She goes, on to 2079. No, it's
2079, so,
2044. Okay, there you go.
So we have a little more time than you think.
There you go.
So, but I do not have a problem in making a motion, and I will read this.
Okay, I'm uppercasing broken ground,
You
sorry.
can work on it while I read this to the other members of the committee. I would make a motion that we bring to the full board for approval a declaration of official intent of the Concord School District of New Hampshire to reimburse certain expenditures from proceeds of indebtedness, whereas the Concord School District, New Hampshire, parentheses, the district, close parentheses, intends to design and construct a new middle school to be built on the broken ground capitalized school/park complex, parentheses, the project, close parentheses, whereas the district expects to pay certain capital expenditures parentheses, the reimbursement expenditures, close parentheses, in connection with the project prior to the issuance of indebtedness for the purpose of financing costs associated with the projects on a long-term basis, whereas the district reasonably expects that debt obligations in the amount not expected to exceed $11 million will be issued, and that certain of the proceeds of such debt obligations will be used to reimburse the reimbursable expenditures, and whereas Section 1.150-2 of the Treasury Regulations requires the district to declare its reasonable official intent to reimburse prior expenditures for the projects with proceeds of a subsequent borrowing. Now, therefore, the district declares, Section 1, the district finds and determines that the foregoing recitals are true and correct. Section 2, this declaration is made solely for the purpose of establishing compliance with the requirements of Section 1.150-2 of the Treasury Regulations. This declaration does not bind the district to make any expenditure, incur any indebtedness, or proceed with the projects. Section 3, the district hereby declares its official intent to use proceeds of indebtedness to reimburse itself for reimbursement expenditures. Section 4, this declaration shall take effect from and after its adoption. The undersigned, President of the School Board of the District, hereby certifies that foregoing is a full, true, and correct copy of the declaration of the Concord School District, New Hampshire, duly made at a meeting thereof held on May 6, 2024, and that said declaration has not been amended, modified, or revoked by the district. Is there a second?
I will second.
Mr. Cotton.
Just a couple of clarifications, if I could. The second whereas talks about projects. I think we only have a project, right?
Yes, that's it.
And that's also shown in the
Oh, I
fourth.
got you.
In the
Okay.
fourth whereas, it says projects once again. And in section 2 of, at the very last word of section 2 is projects.
I will affirm that with them, that that's okay, that they don't look at it as individual. It is all just one project.
Okay.
Yeah,
The reason
I would agree.
The
with
reason I bring
businesses
that up
there.
is because the first whereas
Yep.
defines it as
Yep,
project.
okay, I will review that again
So-
with them then, but, okay.
So I would, rather than read this all again, amend this motion to make those corrections.
To reflect
And
project.
does the second agree or concur?
Yes, I concur.
Since we both concur, that's good. Thank you, Mr. Cotton. As I was reading it, I was thinking that myself, but I was concentrating more on reading, so. Good. So you note those, I counted 3
3.
cases? Okay. Anything else with regards to discussion? Okay, the motion to the full board has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes. We will take this to the full board in the May meeting. Anything else, Mr. Dunn?
I'm good.
Superintendent, do you have anything?
No, this is good.
Members of the committee, do you have anything you'd like to bring up at this time?
No, thank you.
Not seeing anything, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Made by Ms. Campbell, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Cotton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Nice job. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Jeff.